All right. Welcome everybody then to the second half of session number 7. And maybe I'll figure out how to go back to the first page. Maybe not. Oh, come on. Here we go. All right. So welcome to session number 7. We have two things. One, we didn't get through all the pronouns last time. We didn't get to the independent pronoun yet, the one used for nominal sentences and for also some special cases of possession. Before we do that, though, I had a homework set for the pronouns that we had covered. So I would propose let's go through that first and then tackle the new topic. And then close out chapter 7. That will be my goal for today. Any questions before we get started? If not, then let's jump right in. And I think I'll have to minimize the pictures a bit so you guys can see the screen. Okie doke. So here we go. Quick recap. What have we covered the last time? A ton of different pronouns. Before I go into them individually, for the benefit of those newer to Egyptian, terminology. I mean, in English, it doesn't make a difference if I say, I don't know, I am in New York City, or I am German, or I'm good, or whatever. They all use the same pronoun I. In Egyptian, that varies. It varies on what, it depends on what kind of a sentence it is. And we classify the sentences by what kind of predicate they take. So in other words, whatever is being said about the subject, the predicate, what form it takes. If it is a fully inflected verb, then we call that sentence a verbal sentence. For example, a segem F kind of sentence that has an inflected verb form of segem in there. Or if it is an adverbial sentence, like, for example, he is there, or for example, he is upon hearing. Well, yeah, this is an adverbial predicate, there or upon hearing. So that's called an adverbial sentence. If the predicate is an adjective, like he's good, bad, big, they are many, whatever. So that would be an adjectival sentence. And finally, if you're saying A is some noun, is B, basically, that's a nominal sentence. Like, for example, our chisholm pie that we had before, it's a dog. Is a tie, it is Isis, etc. Those are nominal sentences. And while in English, those distinctions don't really matter that much. In Egyptian, they matter a lot because what pronoun you choose depends very strongly on what kind of sentence you're dealing with. I didn't really mention that in detail last time, so I thought I should quickly point that out, especially for newcomers to the language. So with that being said, let's take a look at the pronouns that we covered so far already. There is the most versatile of all the suffix pronouns, the suffix pronoun series used for possessive, to glue onto prepositions, as the subject of inflected verbs, like, for example, in the segem F form, and also as the object of infinitives. So if I have Gimi to find, Gimtef to find him, why is there a T in there? Because that's the infinitive ending T for weak verbs with 3 radicals, where basically that T comes out when you stick a suffix pronoun behind it. So that's the suffix pronouns. Then you have in late Egyptian, the new subject pronouns. So that would be tui or ti, tuk or te. And those are the ones that are used for adverbial sentences. So if you want to say I am here, it would be tui dai, or dy basically. Tui dai, tuk dai, you're here, etc. So that is for adverbial sentences. Also for our first present, because the first present is an adverbial sentence. Tui her segem, I upon hearing. The herd later falls out, like we've discussed many times, but the logic still stays the same. At the basic nuts and bolts level, it's still an adverbial sentence, so you use those pronouns. Then you have the good old dependent pronouns, like in Middle Egyptian already, which are, well, primarily direct objects of verbs, anything but the infinitive. So if you wanted to say he sees me, the me would be basically we. Unless, of course, it's an infinitive, like if you were to say he is upon seeing me, then you would have to put the suffix pronoun. All right. because it's an infinitive. So direct object of verbs except the infinitive. You also use them for adjectival sentences, the so-called ne vsdo construction. So good, he, in other words, he is good. And you can also use them for certain possessive constructions, like, for example, he or it belongs to you, intexu. The thing that belongs gets put into the dependent pronoun form. And finally, we have another innovation in late Egyptian, the so-called new object pronouns. And what they basically are is, since there are some very common verbs which take a T in the infinitive, and that T comes out if followed by a suffix pronoun, otherwise it falls off because it's a word final T, but when followed by a suffix pronoun, it's protected. So that sort of looks like you have an object pronoun, T, took, after the infinitive. And so that becomes a thing in its own right. We briefly discussed that last time, I believe, that you can also use this now, for example, with imperatives, like to give, took, to give you, where there shouldn't be a T in the first place. Well, who am I to say there shouldn't be? They did that. So basically, you take that pronoun, or rather the combination of infinitive T and pronoun, would make it its own thing. That competes with the traditional dependent pronoun. So you can find both as the direct object. Yeah, of course, not for things like the ne vsdo construction or the intoksu construction, just as the direct object of verbs. That's an innovation in late Egyptian, just like the subject pronouns. You'll notice that those look almost the same, but they are different in the third person. In the third person, this here would be su or set. Wait, is that correct? Yes, yes. This one is the one that gets the su, and the object pronoun is the one that would be tuf. So that is a little bit confusing because they look so similar. But yeah, they have different functions and they are quote unquote different things. All right. Any questions on this one before I go on? If not, yeah, go ahead.
No, I forgot what I wanted to say. Sorry.
No worries at all. It will come back, I'm sure. Okay, then let me go on a little bit to the homework exercises. It's a lot that we covered there last time. And I thought it would be a good idea to practice that. And the best way to practice is actually to use the language. So the way I was envisioning this is we have a bunch of sentences here with a noun highlighted in blue. And let's replace that by the correct pronoun. And of course, to be able to do that, I'd recommend to first figure out what kind of a sentence is it? Is it a verbal sentence? Is it an adverbial sentence? Are you trying to replace the subject or the object? And then based on that, you have a much better chance of picking the right pronoun. So with that being said, let's get right into it. If anybody want to take number one. What does it mean? What kind of a sentence is it? And to replace the blue part, what pronoun would it be?
I can take it.
All right.
So that reads pa sheri her in brackets gem wa hereret. So it means the boy or the child finds a flower.
That's right.
So what we have this hergem, which used to be like a, what you call that? Like more a present progressive tense, but has become just a neutral present tense in late Egyptian. But because of the her, it counts as an adverbial sentence.
Keyboard disease. We came out in Korean for some reason. Adverbial sentence.
Oh, okay. So the subject of adverbial sentences, as we've just been through, are the proclitic pronouns or new subject pronouns. So it's su hergem wa hereret.
That is absolutely correct. So, yeah, and I'll just copy the rest over because I'm lazy. All right. Perfect. Very well done. So the subject of the adverbial sentence. I'll just put subject in there as well for anybody who watches that later. I guess. All right. Very well done. Thanks, E.T. Who wants the next one?
I'll take it.
All right.
Okay, so Pasheri hergem, well, had the same sentence. It's also adverbial. It's the same structure. So it would become Pasheri hergem s.
Yeah, that now it gets interesting. What is this S in grammatical terms?
This is the suffix pronoun because I think since it's an infinitive, it takes.
Yeah. Oops. Either you or I are frozen. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes,
Yeah, she's frozen.
Aaron is
Yes,
frozen.
Aaron is frozen.
Oh, I think Aaron dropped out. But she was just about
Yeah,
to say.
she's back now.
Okay, Aaron, you're back?
Hi, yeah, I guess I have a bad connection. Sorry.
Okay, now we can hear you again. I think you left on it's a suffix pronoun and then you were gone.
I was just saying a suffix pronoun because that's the object of an infinitive.
You're absolutely correct. So this is really, it should probably be gimtes, something like this. And they can spell that with an extra T at the end. What I don't know, if you have the masculine version, it would be gimtuf, so that you actually spell that T with an extra W. I've also seen it for the first person, like gimtui, to find me. I have not been able to find a version of the third person feminine. So maybe it's just gimset, maybe it should be gimtusit, so to say. I really don't know. But your analysis is totally correct. So let's keep it at that. Gemes, gemse, something like this, but it is the suffix pronoun. It's not the dependent pronoun because it's an infinitive. So yeah, perfect. Well done.
So wait, sorry, why would there be a T, a potential T at the end, if it's the suffix pronoun?
So yeah, here's the thing. The verb to find, gemi, is a weak verb. It has a weak third consonant, right? And those also called feminine infinitive, although that's sort of a misnomer, but they do get a T, right? Just like in Middle Egyptian. So
Yeah, the gemet I get, just the T that you put in bracket after the S. So
that one.
but
yeah. That is the wildest thing. I got you now, sorry. They just often write, instead of writing S or S, they write set. What it could be is that at this point in time, hang on, that basically Egyptian, come on, where are you? So set, oops, set and S and set, that they're basically all pronounced say at this point in time. So it's all like a generic S marker at the end, so to say. I think that's probably where it comes from, but you sometimes see set for where you would expect S, where there shouldn't be etymologically like a final T, because it's not a dependent pronoun, but it's just, it is just the good old suffix pronoun S, and you still see a T there. Like, for example, in Horus and Seth, Isis changed her form, and then it basically says form dot set, even though it doesn't make any sense. It should be.
No, right, that really doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So this is basically late Egyptian there.
There.
Because these
there,
are
there,
sort of mixed up in writing in English.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's there. You got it. That's exactly what it is. Yes. So yeah, they do that. It probably reflects something about the pronunciation. Maybe there was still like a little bit of a vowel at the end. Maybe it is gemtese or something. Who knows? I really don't know. But it's interesting. Cool. I think it's just interference. Or did somebody else have a question? If not, then let's move on to number 3. Any takers?
I'm sorry. I had a question about the first one.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. I was going to say it before, but I was trying to let everybody get it out.
Oh, no, go for it. Mhm.
So I know it's adverbial, but the dependent pronoun. So why wouldn't this be treated as a first present? Like, why wouldn't it be to, like, he found, or to F deaf heard again?
Good question. Gotcha. Let me pull up the one from last time. It's just that's the form it takes in the first present. The first person basically has Sue and said, and later they both merge into Sue. So for female and for male, it would just be Sue. So it's,
there is no deaf.
there is one, but it's that object pronoun thing, that new object pronoun.
Yeah, right.
And it's so
Yep, gotcha.
confusing. You're absolutely right, because the new object pronoun, like the first and the second person, looks
Yes.
exactly like the first person pronoun and the second person pronoun for the first present, or for the adverbial. But then that's where they're different. To make things even more fun, the dependent pronoun, the third person is Sue and said, so that looks the same. So you have like those multiple pronoun classes overlapping in different places. So I'm glad you asked. Actually, it's kind of messy.
So it is, but it's still a first present though, right?
Yeah, your grammatical analysis is spot on. So if it were I'm finding a flower, or I find a flower, it would be tui, and then took into
Tui.
Tui, or team, maybe. That's what it becomes in Coptic. I know that Zatzinger doubts whether there ever was a W. It may just be a writing convention. All right, great question. Want to take the next one then? Looking for volunteers.
Sure.
All right. So what kind of sentence do we have here?
All right. So starting with a verb. So would be adverbial again? Wait, no.
Are you sure?
Wait, we have a verb. Hold on, wait a second again. I attempted to say subjunctive because it's starting with.
Could be.
And
You're
we
right.
have so it's subjunctive, yeah?
It could be. I mean, it could be one of two things. Subjunctive is one of them. Past tense is the other. So you can't tell them apart only by context. They look the same.
Yes, because this could be a sedum. Yes, this could be a sedum F. Or oh yeah, okay, subjunctive. Yep. Or a past tense. So it's verbal sentence. So, and we want to replace ba shari with the appropriate pronoun. Yeah.
That's
the appropriate. Right. So gem is the child. So would it be he? So gem. I'm tempted to say Sue. Can Sue? Let's see. Gem. No, it'd be gem Sue. So it has to be
You're allowed to cheat.
No, it has to be a suffix pronoun.
That's right. You got it.
Right. So gem. So gem F.
That's right. That's exactly what it is. Would be gem F. Oops.
Waheret.
The rest stays the same. That's really all it is. So you just replace the subject by a suffix pronoun, like you said. And no T required after the gem because it's not an infinitive. It's like you said, it's a sedum F, so it doesn't take any extra infinitive endings or something. So it's just gem if waheret. All right. That's Chris. Well done. Two more. So they're all verbal sentences because it's the same sentence 3 times over. So I guess the part we can skip. But what are we replacing?
Okay, if there are no volunteers, I can take another
Yeah.
one.
I'll try.
Sounds good.
Shall I try?
Yeah.
Oh, hi,
go
you
ahead.
made it.
Hi,
Hi,
sorry.
You made it.
Yeah, sorry, I've had a 6-hour nightmare journey, but it's
I
good for me.
heard.
Thanks, if you don't mind. So I'll try it. So I've got to replace. So this says gum. So find pa. I'm going to work it out once I've worked out what it says. Find pa the, which is masculine. Shri. Find the boy. I always forget what this blue thing is. These blue things.
Wa is one.
One.
Mhm.
I can't find the boy. Is that right?
Mhm.
A flower.
That's right. You got it.
Okay, so find the boy is the indirect object.
Oh, actually,
Find a flower. Yeah, the boy.
Mhm.
Is that right?
it's correct. It's even a direct
so
subject. Because
Okay, so-
mhm.
direct object is the direct object is the boy, and then the subject is the flower.
The other way around. Verbal sentences.
Okay, so find the boy a flower.
Mhm.
So find him a flower. So is he the subject then?
He is. But let me mention this real quick. So in I was going to get there in a slide, in one slide later, but in English, basically, we always have the subject in front, right? Or almost always. The boy finds a flower, verb, subject, object. The traditional verbal sentence in Egyptian is verb, subject, object. Doesn't Hebrew do something similar? So it would be find the boy a flower. So the subject comes.
Ancient Hebrew does.
Modern not, right?
Hebrew
Yeah, right.
has switched to subject, verb, object, unless you want to make stuff seem old-fashioned. Then you use verb, subject, object as a way to make it sound old, like you might use thou in English to sound like you're
Interesting.
Shakespeare.
I didn't know that. I just do for
So-
biblical Hebrew.
So what was I right when I said find the boy a flower?
Almost. The boy found a flower, or may the boy find a flower. The boy is definitely the doer here, because the subject comes in.
Oh, I see. So you mean it's ambiguous, but the word order makes it not ambiguous.
Absolutely.
If you know English grammar, which is always my problem.
Mhm. So yeah, you're right. It's definitely the subject. Mhm. Yeah. Okay, and it's a SEGMF form, which would be most likely here past tense. It could, so the boy found a flower, or it could be a subjunctive, which would be may the boy find a flower. It really depends on context. You can't tell them apart in writing. They may have had a difference in vocalization, but you wouldn't see that since you only see the consonants. So yeah, so far so good. And the part I was asking to replace, Chris was just replacing the subject by putting an F here, a suffix pronoun. But what if we want to replace the object, the flower? The boy found it, namely the flower. What would go in its place? And I think you may have missed the beginning, so I will quickly refer to the previous one.
Feminine flower.
Yeah,
It's a feminine flower.
it is.
The boy found her.
That's
and
right.
so, as it were, and her, and let me see, found it, which is a her.
Mhm.
So se,
That's right. Set.
is that right? Se.
You have it. That's correct. So it would be most likely set. I say most likely because if you look like a little bit later, for example, in Wenamun, he would probably have said su, because later they merge, because they're both pronounced se, essentially, like you said. So could be either of those two spellings. This is how it was probably realized in pronunciation. And that's it. Well done. Okay. Well, thanks so much.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
wouldn't it, since it's a pronoun now, wouldn't it come before the subject?
Yeah.
Ooh,
You're
yes.
right. I fell into my own trap. So that's the thing. The Egyptian likes to have the pronouns as far in front as possible, and we'll get there in the next page. And I completely forgot myself now. Thanks, Aaron. So yeah, it would be gem or gemu or something. Set pasheri. Great call out. Thanks much. Okay. Want to take the next one then? For what happens when you replace both the subject and the object?
Who?
Oh, I was asking Aaron.
It's yeah, Aaron.
Oh, sorry, I didn't think you were talking to me. Okay, so in this case, okay, we're replacing the subject and the object, so it's going to become verb, subject, object again, because they're both pronouns. So it'll be gem, f, set.
You're absolutely correct. Yep, that will be it.
And the f will be it's a suffix pronoun again, because it's the subject of a verb.
Right. Perfect. Let me see. Is
Can
that what
I just interject though? The reasoning isn't that once they're both pronouns, the order is verb, subject, object again. The ordering of pronouns. Okay, maybe I'm talking Middle Egyptian here, but as far as I understand, it stays the same in Late Egyptian. The ordering of pronouns is decided by the type of pronoun. If you somehow had, say, the object is a dependent pronoun and the subject is an independent pronoun, the subject would still come after the object. So I think the type of pronoun order trumps the subject object thing in all cases.
Do you have an example for that last case? What that would look?
No, I was just, I mean, let me.
I thought,
Assuming so, a suffix pronoun can be the object of an infinitive, but an infinitive can't have a subject, can it?
right.
I
If
think
it depends on objects.
yeah, it would. I think we maybe, I mean, actually, that's what I wanted to get into next. So why don't we just do it? I'm wondering if it doesn't end up in the same place. If there's really a way how to distinguish those 2 points of view.
Yeah, okay. I just remember in Middle Egyptian you can construct things like that, though I'd have to get the book to find an example.
Okay.
If you want, I can.
Yeah, but I thought in Middle
Give me a
Egyptian, we
second.
carried over to Middle Egyptian that a verb and a subject, that's a bound construction. And I thought nothing can come between a verb and its subject. So the first satellite of a verb normally is its suffix pronoun.
Yes, it's suffix pronoun, but its suffix pronoun doesn't have to be its subject.
That's,
okay, right. So in case here,
the subject can be something that is not a suffix pronoun. It can be a noun for a start.
So who found in this case that last sentence? Can we go back and look at it for a second if we don't mind? Who found? So who found here? Did the boy find or did it find?
definitely the boy, because like you said, I mean, I think I see where ET is going, namely, you have these weird things when you use an infinitive in narration, like going off the Pharaoh into foreign lands or something to conquer the enemies. And I think there is something at the back of our mind that the going of the Pharaoh, well, in this case, it's easy, but the killing of the Pharaoh, is it the Pharaoh being killed or is the Pharaoh doing the killing? There may be some ambiguity there when you're dealing with infinitives, which have a suffix pronoun after them. I'd also have to look at some examples. Honestly, I wasn't thinking about that one. But I think that's probably where some ambiguity could come in versus subject and an object if you use the suffix pronouns after an infinitive, because they can be either, technically. So I'm trying to think now, how would you say, yeah, like his killing of the enemies or something? How would you do that grammatically? I'm going to pass on that one for the moment because I honestly have to look at some examples, how that's done typically. I know it's in Alan somewhere, chapter 14, 13, somewhere there. But yeah, maybe let's cover the more common cases first. And of course, I want to get to that rule from Alan, the vsdo SOA rule. Before we go there, it always helps to take a quick look at English, just because that causes like 80 to 90% of the confusion when learning any other language, in my experience, the own language, the source language that you start from. So in English, it normally would be subject, verb, for pretty much any sentence, it will be subject, verb, object, adverb. What I mean by that is the boy, subject, gave, verb, a flower, object, to the girl, there will be some kind of adverbial expression. On that night, again, some kind of adverbial expression. Datives behaves in a special way. So if you want to indicate the recipient or beneficiary, that actually comes before the object in English. So it really becomes something like subject, verb, dative, object, direct object, adverb. So the boy gave the girl, in other words, to the girl, a flower on that night. In Latin, in German, in Russian, the girl would now have a separate case, a dative case. In English, we did away with that. So you can't really tell formally the difference between the dative object and the direct object or accusative object just by position in the sentence. Or if you think about how you can replace that by to or for, like some kind of adverbial expression. I'm mentioning that because datives are also special in Egyptian. That's why I thought I'd point that out. They're special in Egyptian. They're also special in German. In English. They get different placement before the object. Okie doke. So far, so good. Just want to have that out of the way, the terminology. So let's look at that in Egyptian. And it depends on whether you're dealing with a verbal sentence or some other kind of sentence. For verbal sentences, it is verb, subject, object. So di pasheri, so verb, subject, wachererit, a flower, entasherit, to the girl, emgerich pen, on that night. So you can stack as many adverbs or adverbial expressions afterwards. So there could be many A's here in the end. Why emgerich pen and not empagerich? Because empagerich would mean tonight. And emgerich pen is on that night. They keep the old Middle Egyptian demonstrative for those cases, for day and for night. It's an interesting little specialty. And this year's obviously past tense because it's a Sedgeman form, so it should really be probably on that night. Okay, so verb, subject, object, adverbial expression, another adverbial expression. Adverbial sentences, even easier. It's basically subject, adverb. That would be the simplest, like the boy is there. If you want to put a pseudo-verbal thing like had di upon giving, well, that still goes into a second position, and then comes the object, then comes the other stuff. So far, so good. It only gets tricky when you have pronouns, like we just found out. So if your object does become a pronoun, and the way that Alan notes that is basically if it's like a noun, he puts it in capital letters. And if it's pronominal, he puts it in lowercase letters. So if the object becomes a pronoun, it moves ahead of all the capital letters. If you have a dative object and it becomes a pronoun, so NF for him, NS for her, ni for me, and so on, they also move towards the front of the sentence. And the subject, if it's a suffix pronoun, on a fully inflected verb, it also moves all the way to the front. So essentially, depending on what becomes a pronoun, that determines its position in the sentence. And if the other ones are not pronouns, they stay basically towards the back. What about a nominal dative, like, for example, to the girl? Well, it behaves like all other adverbial expressions. It comes at the end. This takes a bit of getting used to. It's also taking a little bit to remember, and Alan has this very funny mnemonic there. Very small dogs often sniff other animals, and that's a great way how to remember that. Very small dogs. So very being the verb, subject, dative object, direct object, And then the sniff other animals is, again, a nominal subject, if there's one, a nominal direct object, and then all the adverbial expressions. Okie doke. Once you've learned to see this in sentences, there's really no more doubts what should go where. Unless, of course, E.T., you found something that in the meantime that.
Yeah, but it's Middle Egyptian, it's in Gardiner. So I did find my example, which is nen, nek, set. It does not belong to you. So it is expressed by a dependent pronoun, the set at the end, and to you, which isn't really, what is it, the adverbial has a suffix pronoun, so it comes before the subject. So nen, not, nek, as in to you, and set, the dependent pronoun.
No, not really a verbal
So-
sentence, all right? So it's a different beast. So I
It
wouldn't
is.
break the rule.
It is, but I just wanted to say, you know, my point was that the ordering of pronouns, yeah, kind of trumps this, but true, it's not verbal.
Right. No, it's interesting. I mean, there are some cases that are different. Like, for example, also entexu, it is yours. Now you have something like an independent pronoun and then the su, the subject at the end. But yeah, all those are not verbal. So I would keep them as separate cases, as separate constructions. But yeah, good point.
Okay, but do they fit adverbial? They fit adverbial much better.
You mean
Is there such a thing as a prepositional sentence?
not really.
spoken?
Those would be adverbial.
Right,
All right.
but it's not really the construction of an adverbial sentence either, is it?
What the non nexu?
And next set.
I always struggle with the nun, what that really is, honestly.
Yeah.
Nexu.
I've kind of gotten to think of it as a negation verb a bit too much, because that
Yeah.
helps to remember where it goes.
Right.
But
it's not a
that
verb.
isn't really a good way of thinking of it, because it doesn't behave like a verb otherwise.
Right. It's really tricky.
And
Let's-
again, that works, if anything, for Middle Egyptian. Definitely don't know if it works for late.
Right. Yeah, I would park that one when we get to the nun. but,
Okay, let's park it.
I'll go through the other ones real quick if you guys agree, just because I wanted to cover the independent pronoun. Don't want to hold us up for a third session. So let me quickly go through those. What I saw in the homework was mostly correct. The other questions I had asked, how would you say I find a flower? Well, I find is a first present, so it's an adverbial sentence. So it would be tui, gim, wacheret. So that was easy. If you want to make it a past tense, the easiest way to do that is to just use the sejamef. So gemui, wachrere. I got an email. How do you know it's gemui and not gemai? The answer is I don't. I'll put that in the chat later how we know that is an R sound for the prospective, but I have no idea how Poist came up with the U vowel for the past tense. Maybe I should ping him sometime. I don't know him, but we're about the same generation. I could just write him an email, I guess. Now, in any case, so gemui wachrere. How about you find? You find, again, back to the present tense, would be tuk or tu for the feminine, and then again an adverbial sentence. Sorry, I'm jumping adverbial, verbal, adverbial, but it really goes with the tense, which one you pick. Now, let's say if I started with a past tense narrative and I want to continue, very often I do that using that little u, and the u takes the suffix pronoun, as I think everybody who sent me the homework has correctly identified. So if I wanted to make it while I was finding, so this is going on in parallel, it would be iui, or probably actually something like a, that's how it's pronounced in Coptic, right? E hergemi wachere. What else? This here was an interesting one. This one we should go into. That's slightly modified from a real sentence, so I'm pretty confident it's correct. It's basically the sentence was, the boy was searching for the flower and his brother found it, or but his brother found it. And you can again use that circumstantial to indicate that those two actions are like coordinated, or basically one is going on while the other one's going on. So the answer I was looking for was ucha pasheri. Sorry, I don't have the transcription here. Ucha pasheri trachere, feminine, because the flower is still feminine in late Egyptian. It later becomes masculine in Coptic for whatever reason. And then to put the second thing in there, and his brother found it, e paifsan gimtus. So, as I said, I wasn't able to really ascertain whether that object pronoun gets that extra W, because I couldn't find an example for the third person feminine with that verb. Definitely gimtuf, to find him, would have the extra W. And it's in several grammars, but it's pretty funny. If you look in Shoni Grohl, he actually puts TWST, but then he puts a question mark on the sources. So he doesn't have a citation for it. Probably it's taken from Ehrman or someplace else. I didn't follow the rabbit hole. But let's assume that this is correct. It would either be gimset or gimtus. I'm going to go with the last one, just an analogy to the first and the second person. Now, I saw some...
Can I ask a quick
Go ahead.
quick question. When we were doing Coptic yesterday, there seemed to be an awful lot of trouble around the circumstantial. And I said it's to do with which English word you're using. Could what you've written there equally mean since his brother found it, or whilst his brother found it? Does it have to be but?
No, it could be but, it could be and, it could be while, it could be whilst for sure. Since, I would say probably not, just because that sort of seems to indicate...
Yeah, I agree.
Or.
Yeah, completely.
That's really interesting, because somebody, I forgot who, put in their homework, I'm just going to replace this here, put in their homework, you gemui, gemu, I mean, and again, I'm making up the vowels here, so bear with me. Pafsan set or something. I think that's what it was. So basically the idea was, for the second sentence, yeah, use you, like I said, but put another, that would be another Sejm F, right? So the past tense Sejm F, the verb, and then followed by the subject, and then followed by direct object pronoun, or what's it called, the dependent pronoun. That
would have been me, because that is a valid construction in Middle Egyptian. You plus Sejm. Actually, it would probably have been Sejm Enef. So
right.
Thought only half.
You're absolutely on the right track. That's what it also is in late Egyptian. The sentence would mean the boy was looking for the flower after his brother already found it, like, and his brother already having found it. So the second part of the sentence now becomes like, I wanted to say anteriority, so to say. It happened before the main action, and that goes to Rebecca's point from a moment ago. So if you wanted to say since or something, you'd probably use something like this to indicate this already happened, and the boy was still doing that. So that's interesting. Those two things both exist, but they mean different things. Kind of cool.
I did the same thing, but I put this set after gem.
Say that again.
Gem
me
set
too.
pi. Yeah, I did the same thing.
Oh, would it be, you're saying, would it be, should it go here? Yupa.
Now, you gem set 5 sen.
Right.
Because then you'd have to have the object would have to be expressed through a dependent pronoun, which would then have to go in front of the noun.
Did I do it again? I did it again. Thanks, guys, for keeping me honest. I teach the rule and then I make the mistake again. That's too funny. Brilliant. Thanks. Much
We're
better.
all human.
And it is unusual. I mean, this is weird for us because you don't really do that in English. You don't move the object pronoun into a different spot, I think. Now I'm wondering. Okay, just looking at the clock, let me do the last one real quick. So bonus question, how would you say I give a flower to you? Well, that's where the dative then basically comes before the direct object. Tui or ti, khadi, ni, ne, sorry, ne, because it's to you. Ne used to be net, I guess, wachereret. And let's see if I got the last one right. Yeah, because it's an infinitive, you would put the suffix pronoun after the infinitive, and then the dative goes after that. If you don't remember why, it's basically because the dative is that's not covered here because this is an infinitive. Sorry, and the very small dogs rule is for fully inflected verbs. I'll just leave it at that. So basically, in that case, it would be infinitive, suffix pronoun, and then the dative, the pronominal dative. Okie doke. Well, glad that typically we have to translate in the opposite direction. I hope if that was all reasonably clear, then let's go on to the last pronoun so we can catch them all in this session, namely the independent pronoun. So we've covered how to do verbal sentences. We've covered how to do adverbial sentences. We didn't really talk much about adjectival sentences because they're rare in at least more colloquial late Egyptian. Very formal one still has them. But the other big category we haven't talked about is nominal sentences. So how do you say I'm a student, or how do you say I'm an Egyptian, or something of that nature? For those, you use the independent pronouns. So, for example, for I, that is anak or inek in the way it is spelled. It's spelled inuk, but in Coptic it becomes anok. So we can sort of guess what it must have sounded like in late Egyptian. So probably something like anak. Anak wa rome in or ramet in kemet. I am an Egyptian. I'm a man from Egypt. Well, not true, but it's a real example sentence. So I wanted to use that. Or if you want to say it is I or it is me, anak pai. So that's when you use the independent pronouns. Of course, also my favorite example sentence, you guys can figure out what that means. Luke, anak, paik, it, or yat. So Luke, I'm your father. Again, that's where the independent pronoun goes in Middle and also in Late Egyptian. You can use it for a few other things. You can also use it for emphasis, or you can also use it like if you wanted to say, well, as for me, or for him, or for you, or something. Ir anak, as for me, anak sutech, I am Seth. So that's another way how you can use it. You can use it in generally for emphasis, like, well, you'll come with us and you will also get some of the spoils, like to emphasize that, yep, there's something in it for you as well. You can repeat the pronoun by using the independent pronoun, either at the beginning of the sentence or at the end of the sentence to add special emphasis. What else? Possession. That's the other big one. We've covered possession before with that little pie thing, like, for example, well, if you wanted to say, for example, my people, it would be Nai Ramich, right? My people. But what if you wanted to say one of my people? Now you have like one word too many. Namely, you want to have the one in there and you want to have the my in there. And the way you do that is by using, well, technically it could be a different pronoun, but it looks the same. So I'm just going to treat them the same way. Wa Ramich Anak, one man of mine, so one of my people. I don't know, one of my people went out to do some reconnaissance or something. You can also use this to make like a sentence like, in this case, his is the sea. Yeah, his is the sea. And tof payam, that's another way how to do it. Like if you want to make possessive sentences, so to say. So not his sea, but the sea is his. That's a way how you can do it. There are two well, there are old possessive pronouns, namely tut and sut, sometimes without the T, which can also be used for this in this function. Like, for example, if you wanted to say your son, it would be something like Paksheri. But if you wanted to say this son of yours, it would be Pai Sheri Sut. That's how you use these pronouns, basically. And that's it in a nutshell. Let's quickly take a look at how the independent pronouns look. So if you know Coptic, they will look very familiar. Namely, first person is anak, second is entak, or female ento, or enta, I should say. The T is not pronounced anymore. Entaf, entas, and then the plural, anan, entaten, and entau. So yeah, that's what they look like. They all have this common element, M and T. In Middle Egyptian, they don't have an M. That M is coming in Late Egyptian. And it's kind of weird because it's not there in Middle Egyptian. It's not there in Coptic. So what were they doing here? My personal pet theory is that it could be to indicate that there's like a syllabic consonant at the beginning, like intok, intof, intos, but that's entirely of my own making. I've not seen that in any paper or anything, so it could be complete BS, but I don't know. Maybe it's true. It's in any case very, very noticeable that in Late Egyptian you suddenly get this extra M, not before and not after. So M and T. In the interest of time, I'm not going to talk about the weak forms, or maybe just one sentence about that. Neveu mentions it, and he's not the only one, that in Coptic, depending on what construction you have, there's like a weak and a strong form of this pronoun. And there is this search to find the weak form in the Egyptian spelling. And there are some spellings that indicate that there may have been that distinction already in Late Egyptian, but I'm not sure if it's really all that relevant to go into much detail, just in case that you were wondering what that's all about. In Coptic, it's a prominent feature where you would say something like, I don't know, I am a student or something. So it would be anak. How does that go on? Ank or something? You reduce it. You reduce it. There's not the full vowel there anymore in the continuation of the sentence. And that may have been there in Late Egyptian already. Well, so that's it in a nutshell. Now we have covered all the pronouns. So the independent is the big one that we didn't have. These guys here are less common because obviously that is a not so common use case for special cases of possession. And I think with this we have it all. So suffix pronouns, the proclitic subject pronouns for the adverbial sentences, dependent pronouns for the direct object and for adjectival sentences, the new object pronouns, which are really just infinitive T plus suffix, the independent pronouns for nominal sentences, and finally the old independent pronoun / possessive pronoun, tui and tut and sut, sometimes, like I said, without the T. That would be it in a nutshell. This is the last sentence in Neveu in this chapter. And I've just put it up here on the screen because there's like a ton of pronouns. Take a good look at this one, if you liked, in the book to see how they're all used. So there's suffix pronouns in here. There's another suffix pronoun here for the dative. There's one here as a, hang on, gemen se im, that should be a dependent pronoun, the set. And then at the end, they tagged on a independent pronoun. So what the whole sentence means is we said to him, en khajatnaf, en chaik, we will take you, erpa gemnen se im, basically to the place where we found it therein. Literally, it says to, we found it therein. So that the place you have to add in English. We'll take you to the place where we found it. In tuk, that is a conjunctive. It's basically a connecting form. In tuk, ini, you will bring Nick for yourself. Also, you yourself, basically. So that was that usage that I mentioned where you can take the independent pronoun and tag it on at the end of the sentence to say, and you will also take some for yourself, just to emphasize that, yep, this is also for you. Okie doke, that's it in a nutshell. Any questions on this one? Or anything that we just went over?
Well, I've got an observation, which is that I think Late Egyptian is it more specific than Coptic? Because Aurelio, we're really missing you in the Coptic reading group because there's so much ambiguity. You know, is it somebody doing this to that, or is it the other way around? And you can't. There seems to be kind of less grammar in it. Is that what you've experienced?
A really interesting question. I have to think about that one.
And this text we're doing has a lot of, you know, I am the, you know, as this for emphasis. And I kind of instinctively am beginning to think Egyptianly. It's a really big issue because many of these alleged Greek things have been translated into Coptic. And then they say, oh, so we can find out what the Greek original was, which doesn't exist. But the whole way in which these things, emphasis, you know, I, or I alone am, it's a bit like, I guess, Hebrew, you know, as well. So just to say, we miss you. If anyone wants to come and join Coptic, we need you.
Oh, right. So yeah, Fridays, Coptic reading group. I'd love to join, by the way. It's just unfortunately during the workday.
Oh, yes. See for us this evening.
So yeah, I don't have a good answer, unfortunately. If you can play the pronoun game more effectively in Coptic or in Late Egyptian, would have to think about that and see how those sentences compare. But it's an interesting question. What definitely is the case is that Late Egyptian generally is pretty explicit. I find it easy to parse. Maybe because I just don't know Middle Egyptian so well. I'm more comfortable with Late. But normally everything is so explicitly marked, it's not that hard to figure out what things refer to. If that gets worse again in Coptic, I really don't know. Would have to look at a few examples. All right,
Okay,
guys.
I'll write to you later. Yeah, thank you.
Have a good week and see you all. No, yeah, see you either next week or the week after. And then for chapter 8.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye. Have a good evening, good weekend. Bye-bye.